Let me just hit the reset button for our viewers before I ask you the first question here. It's the subject of Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, reports that he may have discussed those sanctions that the Obama administration placed on Russia with the Russian ambassador before Donald Trump became president. Vice President Mike Pence denied this on January 15th. Now we have a statement from Flynn that says it is possible. He can't guarantee that he didn't have these discussions. Basic question here, does the national security advisor right now enjoy the full confidence of President Trump?
Yes, General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president, and this is a big week for General Flynn. He's the point of contact for many of these foreign visits. If you look at the official schedule, today we had the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, here, obviously for bilateral meetings. On Wednesday, we're welcoming Benjamin Netanyahu here to the White House. And behind the scenes, they're doing a number.
So had he not resigned, the president would continue with him as national security advisor, even though he misled the vice president and the administration about the contents of that call?
That fact is what became unsustainable, actually. I think misleading the vice president really was the key here. And I spoke with the president this morning. He asked me to speak on his behalf and to reiterate that Mike Flynn had resigned. He decided that the situation had become unsustainable for him.
But wait
here,
a second.
And of course, the president accepted that resignation.
You're saying that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the White House knew about that last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that Mr. Flynn or General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador. And they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians.
Well, that's one characterization. But the fact is that General Flynn continued in that position and was in the presidential daily briefings, was part of the leader calls as recently as yesterday, was there for the Prime Minister's visit from Canada yesterday. And as time wore on, obviously the situation had become unsustainable.
Kellyanne,
General Flynn.
That makes no sense. Last month, the Justice Department warned the White House that General Flynn had misled them, and that as a result, he was vulnerable to blackmail. And at that moment, he still had the complete trust of the president?
Matt, I'm telling you what the president has said, which is that he's accepted General Flynn's resignation, and he wishes him well, and that we're moving on. There are at least 3 candidates, very strong candidates, that will be considered for a permanent position here. Obviously, General Keith Kellogg is the acting national security advisor starting today, and the president is moving forward.
National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn.
In a surprise appearance at the White House briefing, National Security Advisor Mike Flynn offered a blunt warning to Iran after Sunday's missile test and an attack by Iran-backed militants on a Saudi Navy vessel.
Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
The nomination is confirmed.
An early foreign policy test for Rex Tillerson, confirmed tonight by the Senate as Secretary of State. But Tillerson is taking over a State Department in revolt, a scathing protest by more than 900 career diplomats and civil servants over President Trump's new policy banning visas for citizens from 7 majority Muslim countries. In an internal memo obtained by CNN, the diplomats warned Trump's executive order, quote, will not achieve its aim of making our country safer and is likely to alienate allies in our counterterrorism efforts and increase anti-American sentiment and foster violent extremism.
The cable is, at least in my memory, unprecedented. And it, I think, goes to the deep concern and the broad concern that's felt in the State Department over the actions taken by the administration.
The memo came through the State Department's Dissent channel, which awards employees for voicing foreign policy concerns without retribution. But from the White House, a blunt warning.
I think that they should either get with the program or they can go.
One longtime career officer pushed out by the new administration used his farewell address to urge colleagues to stay and uphold their oath to defend America from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
The policy without professionals is, by definition, an amateur policy. You have to help make the choices that bring this country forward.
In addition to a restless diplomatic corps, Tillerson must also confront allies concerned the new administration is increasing the ISIS threat with its latest moves.
ISIL and Daesh will use any opportunity they can to make difficulties to create the environment that they want to radicalise people, to bring them over to their side. So it is a propaganda opportunity for them, potentially.
In Canada, one lawmaker compared Trump's policies to fascism.
We will call for immediate action and for the Canadian government to finally start standing up to the fascist Donald Trump.
Hear, hear.
Kellyanne, I got to get to the bottom of this here. You asked to come on this morning at the president's request. The president wants you to come out and speak for the White House this morning. Do you know if the president was told 3 weeks ago when Sally Yates told the White House counsel that General Flynn had been compromised? Do you know if the president was told that?
I do not know that, George.
Do you know if the vice president was told that?
I do not know that.
Do you know why the White House chose not to correct the record for those 3 weeks?
Well, again, you're presuming that all the information you have there is completely factual and who knew what when. And this is very fluid. I mean, the bottom line is that as time wore on, as everybody continued in their roles, it became increasingly apparent, particularly over the weekend when General Flynn clarified his own earlier statement, George, a statement that he had provided to the vice president and that other members of the administration, frankly, went out and publicly repeated, which is that he had not discussed a certain topic in his conversations with the Russian ambassador. And so when General Flynn clarified those comments that it's possible and he could not recall, that accelerated matters in a way that was different.
Take a step back for a second. National security is perhaps the most important function or responsibility a president has. And I think the president made the right decision to ask for his resignation. You cannot have a national security advisor misleading the vice president and others. So I think the president was right to ask for his resignation, and I believe it was the right thing to do. Let's speak about Russia for a second. I've always been a Russia skeptic and hawk. New administrations these days try to get better relations with Russia. The Bush administration tried to get better relations with Russia. The Clinton administration, Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration did the reset. So I understand it's reasonable and rational to try and improve relations with Russia. That's what new administrations inevitably do. But I'll leave it up to the administration to describe the circumstances surrounding what brought to this point. I think the key is this, that as soon as this person lost the president's trust, the president asked for his resignation, and that was the right thing to do. Should Congress look into that? I won't prejudge. I'm not going to prejudge any of the circumstances surrounding this until we have all of the information.
Mr. President, what do you think of reports that General Flynn had conversations with the Russians about sanctions before you were sworn in?
I don't know about it. I haven't seen it. What report is that?
Washington Post is reporting that he talked to the ambassador to Russia before you were inaugurated about sanctions, maybe trying to...
I haven't seen that. I'll look at that.
Let me just hit the reset button for our viewers before I ask you the first question here. It's the subject of Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, reports that he may have discussed those sanctions that the Obama administration placed on Russia with the Russian ambassador before Donald Trump became president. Vice President Mike Pence denied this on January 15th. Now we have a statement from Flynn that says it is possible. He can't guarantee that he didn't have these discussions. Basic question here, does the national security advisor right now enjoy the full confidence of President Trump?
Yes, General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president, and this is a big week for General Flynn. He's the point of contact for many of these foreign visits. If you look at the official schedule, today we had the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, here, obviously for bilateral meetings. On Wednesday, we're welcoming Benjamin Netanyahu here to the White House. And behind the scenes, they're doing a number of different meetings where they're talking about trade, they're talking about terrorism, security, the fact that Canada and the U.S. are very important neighbors to each other and will continue to be. And obviously, the National Security Advisor is a very important point person in those discussions. General Flynn has said he can't recall, and that he had about 30 phone calls with, I guess, leaders at the time, and since then 70, I'm told, with different leaders, and I'll just leave his comments at that.
But by saying that he enjoys the full confidence of the president, these two questions that are out there: one, whether he had a conversation before Donald Trump became president that involved the sanctions, and two, whether he misled or provided false information to the vice president, to Mike Pence, who then went out there and said, hey, this type of conversation never took place. By saying he enjoys the full confidence of the president, are you saying you're satisfied that he did not have those conversations, that he did not mislead the vice president?
No, those are two different questions. You asked me, and I'll repeat the answer, does he have the full confidence of the president? Yes, he does. Then you're asking me, what did he talk about with people when I wasn't on the phone? So the only way for me to answer that is to tell you what he has said, which is that he can't recall. And what he informed the vice president at the time through a conversation was that he had not. The vice president went out on TV, as you know, in January and repeated that based on the conversation he had with General Flynn.